Hello, everyone. Welcome to OBO Vinyl Global, where you are going to meet incredible storytellers, internationally acclaimed spinner of yarns. You will encounter their origin sparks, cultural crossings, and the toolbox that makes their voice, prepares them for the rhythm, and offers them pause, and the art of leaving just enough unsaid. Their breath creates magic, and silence creates suspense. They keep us leaning forward. How they retell old myths without embalming them, and the one story they are still afraid to tell. It's a very informal, curious, and joyfully unscripted, freewheeling conversation. Stories are very dangerous. They are reckless. They're unpredictable. They challenge you. They put you in situations that you can never imagine. So let us begin. Take a breath. Turn your attention. And let's roll the vinyl. Welcome. Hello,
Wonderful.
everyone. So this is a very fresh beginning at OBO, a freewheeling conversation with storytellers from the world. And OBO is a platform wherein we have a confluence of storytellers, story listeners, story creators, audio performers, and everyone who would like to share something of their selves. And today we are lucky to have with us a wonderful Asian and American storyteller, Motoko Dworkin. Hello, Motoko. It's a pleasure to have
Hello.
you with us at OBO.
Thank you.
And I am
Wonderful.
Janardan, a Kathavachaka of Katha Vinaya, that is a traditional Indian storytelling form. It's so nice that you have taken out time and would like to share the mysterious world of how you became a storyteller. Because storyteller is almost found everywhere. But when
Right.
you find somebody with an extraordinary way of delivering the story, it becomes magical. And that magic you have been creating in America with a flavor of the Asian folk tales and spices of comedy. So
Mhm.
I would like to know that what was that particular thing that actually drove you into this world of storytelling? Was it a place, a smell, a voice, or maybe a performance that you must have seen?
Right. So, thank you, Dr. Ghosh. And like I said, it is a pleasure and honor to be on this program. I have seen much of your the YouTube channel, the website, and it is all just very, very impressive and magnificent. And I am honored to be part of it. So I grew up in Osaka, Japan, and Osaka is the birthplace of Japanese comedy. So I grew up watching live as well as on television these traditional comedies. One of them being rakugo, which is a 400-year-old storytelling tradition. Another one is manzai, which is like a comedy duo, two people saying funny things to each other. And because I grew up with these things, and also just Osaka being the place it is, it's a city of merchants. So as they say, Tokyo, which is the capital, which was formerly known as Edo, is the city of samurai warriors,
Right.
all kind of formal and very rigid. And Kyoto, which is the ancient capital, belongs to the imperial family, the emperor and the other nobilities, which means they are very elegant and sophisticated and high class.
Correct.
But Osaka has always belonged to merchants, the
Oh,
traders, people, businessmen. My father being one of them, a businessman. We, over the years, Osakans have perfected this special dialect, the way of speaking that is very distinguished, and anybody from Japan can listen to me speak in Japanese and know that I'm from Osaka. It involves just a gentle touch, self-deprecating humor. We're always making fun of ourselves and others. Uh, just a kind of a humorous bantering and truth telling, but with a comical, gentle touch. Because when two merchants talk to each other,
right.
you have to build a win-win situation. You know,
Oh,
it's not like I win and you lose. It's we have to both win. And so that custom has developed this language that allows me to explore humor and entertainment in kind of a special way that I am proud of. And once I moved to the United States, which I did in mid 80s, I was in college then. First came to Massachusetts as an exchange student to University of Massachusetts,
okay.
where I met my future ex-husband. And so he persuaded me to stay in the United States. So I have been living in the United States for almost 40 years and doing storytelling for about 30 years in English. But while I speak in English, I try to bring in the essence of what it is to be an Osakan, the essence of humor and entertainment to what I do.
So it is the magic of the land that has actually urged you or pushed you and ushered you into this magical world of stories. That's very
Right.
interesting, and you have a partner. I did kind of explore his work also. He's a wonderful musician and he sings so well, and very impressive. And so it's a wonderful combination of two interesting, creative people coming together and working together. And it would be a kind of great pleasure to also meet him sometime in future, which I would
Mhm.
definitely request you to help us with. But this in between place that you have, like, Osaka, Japanese way of looking at art practice, especially the generation of humor in conversation. And then you come to America with a different culture, almost like very, very uh, different from what it was in Japan. So, how did
Mhm.
you negotiate with this in between space that you occupy now, also?
That is a very interesting question. Yes, because when I'm in the United States, I'm not quite an American.
Right.
But when I'm back in Japan, I am too Americanized to be truly Japanese, right?
Correct.
So it is an interesting,
Mm.
and I would rather say privileged place to be in. And, from this perspective of being in the middle, I get to see each of the societies from a different perspective, which I think makes my art richer. And it's my blessing and a burden to build a bridge in between the two cultures. Um, Promoting understanding. I have done a little bit of storytelling in Japan. It was kind of challenging for me to tell stories in Japanese because I don't normally do that. But I was part of this, how do you say, a troupe of musicians, classical musicians, and a storyteller, well, and myself, traveling to Miyazaki Japan. This was part called the Carnegie Kids in Miyazaki. It was part of the Carnegie Hall project to commemorate the anniversary of the death of Isaac Stern, a prominent violinist who did a lot of teaching in Miyazaki. So when I was there, I got to tell stories to Japanese children in Japanese, as well as translating my good friend, American storyteller's story from English to Japanese. And that was a great joy. It's a lot of fun. I found out that the children react the same to the stories in whatever countries, whichever culture, language that you're using. Little did I know that half a century later, I will be standing here telling you stories looking more or less exactly like this doll.
So interesting. Like, with storytelling and traveling is something that is very like almost synonymous. And because you had merchants coming to Osaka, I feel this traveling people, like people who would come from different places bringing things and selling, and they bring in stories also. In the Middle East also, we had traveling storytellers. In India also, we had traveling storytellers. So maybe
Mhm,
this traveling
mhm,
from all the way to Japan, from Japan to America, and then this traveling also gathered a lot of the stories that you wanted to share with the children. That is a very interesting aspect of being in different communities, different geographies, and collecting different stories. And another aspect
mhm,
that you mentioned about universality of emotions. So, like the children,
mhm,
they don't look at these geographies or they don't look at which nation you belong to. They look at the essential emotions that is the content of the stories and they react to it. Great. But
mhm,
you mentioned about Rakugo and Rakugo in the practice. I know very little about it, but there is this aspect of a meaningful silence named Ma, that or
mhm,
termed as Ma. So, and especially in comedies, timing, silences, these are very punchlines at the right time. These are certain things which matter a lot. So,
mhm.
how did you use, or what is the kind of your understanding about these aspects?
Right. I am not a real authentic rakugo teller. To become a real authentic rakugo teller, you must become an apprentice in
Uh,
Japan and go through hard training, etc. But like I said, I grew up listening to those stories, and I am familiar with many, many of those stories. Um, and the concept of ma that you mentioned, Dr. Ghosh, is interesting.
correct.
That so it's not always the rapid fire talking. It's not the any type of storytelling. The purpose is not to dominate the audience with information or whatever, but to create a space, a safe space where, as you said, people can experience emotions and the images, memories, things like that. So my understanding is that the meaningful silence or pause, that is constructed with the help of the audience.
Correct.
So I am not there to do the whole work.
Absolutely.
Uh, I don't have to do the whole thing because I need the audience's help. The audience will fill that gap, the pause, the with their imaginations, and then they will respond maybe in laughter, maybe in some other emotions, and then I will go on. So what it really is, the storytelling in any culture, I imagine, is to build up this constant exchange of energies between the teller and the audience.
Correct.
That's what matters the most, even more than what stories you're telling or, things like that. It is this exchange of energies that happens.
Yes, so wonderfully you have mentioned about this transfer of energy between the teller
Mhm.
and the listener. And the listener is also an active person. A person,
Right.
while he listens, is also having an amount of energy. And so that exchange of energy is very, very important and significant during a story
Mhm.
performance. So, as you said, that it is not your job alone, and it's the community, the listener and the
Mhm.
teller coming together and creating that magical moment. That's right.
Right. Right.
But you know, if you look at comedies, and because you deal a lot with comedies, and comedies are things where you kind of create laughter through the imperfection of someone, means there is some
Mhm.
kind of flaw or some kind of mistake or an error. So usually that evokes laughter. So,
Mhm.
but in Japan, I've heard of this, and that also I know very little. I've heard about it, that the philosophy of imperfection, where they are talking about how to stay in imperfection and be happy. To like wabi sabi is one of these very popular term that people keep on talking about. So
Mhm.
when you are dealing with comedy and you have this idea of imperfection in the lead character or someone, or maybe the protagonist who kind of goes through these hurdles, how do you look at this philosophy of imperfection in your stories? Like, how do you deal with it?
Right. That is interesting, Dr. Ghosh, that imperfection, of course, nobody is perfect. This world is not perfect, and no country has ever been perfect. So, and I think that that type of thinking comes quite a bit from Buddhism,
Right.
which of course originated in India and came to Japan through China and Korea. I was reminded of this little anecdote that once there was a Buddhist temple and a new acolyte came in, and his job was to sweep the sand garden. And there were trees and there were leaves. And so he cleared off the leaves, he weeded, he got rid of all the weeds, and he swept the sand garden beautifully. It was perfect. So then he went to his master and said, Master, I have perfected your sand garden. Look, it's perfect. And the master said, It's not perfect at all. You do not understand. So the acolyte thought and thought, and finally an idea came to him. So he rushed over to one of the trees and he shook the branches, shook the trees so that a few leaves would fall and rested on the perfectly shaped sand.
Right.
And the master said, Now it is perfect.
Right.
So the idea of perfection, how do you say, includes the idea of imperfection. It almost has to be imperfect to be perfect. It's kind of an interesting idea.
So
But yes,
actually,
um, so like you said, in my
yeah.
humor stories, oftentimes the protagonist has some kind of flaw. And the protagonist is, as a storyteller, I'm in the position of the protagonist. So what's important, I think, is not the humor is self-deprecating. It's directed toward me and not, I'm not pointing fingers at other people saying, aha, how silly they are, or they're making mistakes, their ways are flawed. That's not the role of storytelling. I This is very, I think, important, especially in the United States in these days, that storyteller's job is not to condemn or blame or criticize, but to find commonalities amongst the people so that we understand that we are all the same or similar. We have much in common that we could laugh at. That's the stance that I try to take.
Wonderful, wonderfully, you coined this term of imperfection being included in perfection, or vice versa, like perfection in imperfection. And life is like that only, isn't it? Like it is made out of opposites. So wonderfully,
Mhm,
you have mentioned, and the way you said that it is like looking at self, and which is a process of encouraging inclusivity, like including
mhm,
everyone, and then create a moment of laughter which eases out the tension between two people or two ideas or two concepts. So
mhm,
laughter is like kind of, melting the conflicts and bringing things
mm,
together, which you said. And that is what another very interesting thing about perfection, imperfection, you mentioned about Buddhism traveling from
mm.
India to Japan and China and Korea. So, and you did mention in one of our earlier conversation that most of the stories that you perform or you narrate are having Indian origins, but they are Japanese stories and Korean stories. So I think
Right,
somewhere there is this link, this bridge between the Asian nations through Buddha's philosophy and through stories also. So, can you throw some light on this bridging of the nations through stories and how the stories travel from one space
right,
to the other, from one teller,
right.
one geography to the other? A little of that.
Right. It's interesting. I often ask children that I teach, what do people and stories have in common? And of course, people say different things, but the one of the most important things is stories. People travel, and so do stories. As people travel, stories travel. So as you said, Dr. Ghosh, most of the Japanese folk tales that I tell today, they originate in India from all those Buddhist parables, Panchatantra,
Yeah.
uh,
Jataka tales.
Jataka tales,
Correct.
tales like that. When you delve deeply into their histories, they all come back to India. So from India, all those stories went through China and the rest of Asia, including Japan. It also went to Europe, and from there, maybe moved to African continent. So I find this very, very interesting.
Uh, and
Yeah.
yeah,
The what was I going to say? Yes, so one of the ways that ancient Japanese people got stories is through Buddhist sermons. So as once Buddhism came into Japan, I think maybe fifth or sixth century, the Buddhist priests would do sermons, but to how do you say, to engage their audience, they had to make their sermons interesting.
perfect.
So they would read these Buddhist scriptures and take stories and then tell them to the people in Japanese, of course, in the most interesting way. And that's one of the origins of Japanese storytelling, even rakugo. So storytelling, I mean, people have always told stories around the hearth, within the families, like you said, the grandparents will tell children, I mean, stories, things like that. The village elders will tell stories to the younger people. But also there's this important tradition of Buddhist priests telling stories, so that the people will learn from them. Another one, even during the period when samurai warriors ruled the land, those samurais and samurai lords and shoguns had storytellers as their teachers or tutors so that they can keep up with the current events and ancient wisdom. They would hire storytellers to tell them stories so that they can learn. So all those things, those three traditions, the family, the Buddhist sermon, and the samurai warriors hiring these professional storytellers as tutors, those traditions all kind of converged and became classical storytelling forms such as rakugo or a couple others, kodans or things like that that people enjoy even today.
Right. Okay. That is what, that is what I also feel, that most of the philosophy which we get from great minds and great seers, they're very complex. And the way they express it, like in axioms, or which is in India, it is known as sutras, are very
Mm,
complicated for common people
mm,
like us to understand. And there,
mm,
I think these stories come in to help us understand that complex idea or that complex philosophy. And it has been a practice throughout the world. And I think stories are received better than a straight preaching or a teaching, which a philosopher or a religious practitioner or a spiritual practitioner would like to convey. And that's
mhm,
why you have parables, the Christian parables, you have
mhm,
Buddhist fables, and you have the entire series of Puranas in India, which are only
mhm.
stories. And through stories, the knowledge permeates, it enters, and it seeps like water and gets into the different layers of our mind. That's what I feel, that's what you wanted to say. So very good. What about now? Let us now look into some technicalities, like when you are performing, like when you are performing for children or for adults. How would you look at the designing of the space, like or the room or the classroom? Is there something very
Mhm.
special that you would do for a particular class of yours or a performance of yours?
I think so. So I started telling stories almost 30 years ago, or more than 30 years ago. And for the first 10 years, I only told folk tales in schools to children. So
Right.
for the first 10 years, I did not entertain adults or go into any other really venues like festivals or museums. I went to libraries, but that's also for family audiences.
Okay.
But my main portion of the work, and even today, is through schools, kindergarten and elementary schools, and sometimes middle schools. So in most cases, I insist on intimate setting. And that means that the children will sit on the floor close to me, and I will sit or stand in front of them and tell them stories. Once in a while I get into auditoriums, but even when I'm in a big auditorium with, let's say, 200 children in front of me sitting in the seats, I insist upon them keeping the house lights on so
Okay.
that I can see them as well as they can see me. That is very important, and it's harder and harder in this day and age when children are so used to videos and uh, just watching things on screen. I often tell them that when you watch video or YouTube or screen, they don't care about you. They don't see you. If you went to the bathroom, they won't notice. If you get sick, they don't care because they can't see you. But storytelling is not like that. As a storyteller, I can see you and I care about you. If you feel sick, I will stop the story and take care of you because the whole point of it is to show that we care about each other. So that is my main, how do you say, concern or priority about setting up the space. And it's the same thing with adult audiences. カロルを歌おうファララファラララララ楽しいこの時ファラララララララ